Hello, History 1 students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 17, Section 2, A Growing Economy. So let's begin. In the 1920s, there was a survey taken in Muncie, Indiana, and what they found is that there were more families who owned cars, um, than those people who, for the most part, that did not have bathtubs with running water, which kind of shows you that our economy is kind of growing into a car economy. Henry Ford in 1926 cut the work week for his employees from 6 days to 5 days. He's also known for using an assembly line that divided up operations into simple tasks and cutting down unnecessary motions to a minimum. Ford was also able to reduce the price of his Model T from $850 in 1908 to roughly $295 in 1924. And that kind of leads us to talking a little bit about the assembly line. And as we go through here, you're going to need to write down your notes. But, in the late 19th and early 20th century, Americans, for the most part, industrialized very rapidly, and factory owners, for the most part, and managers were looking for ways to make their workers more competitive and their companies more productive. And as a result of that, we had a fellow named Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was a pioneer in increasing workers' productivity. He was kind of known as the father of scientific management, and he believed that work could be managed by using the scientific method. He used the stopwatch to measure workers' movements. Then he also planned methods for decreasing the movements required to do a task, and hence increasing worker output. As a result of that, his principles are going to be used in creating assembly lines in which the workers are going to be placed along a mechanized line, and the product is going to be placed on that line so that each worker can complete a task, a single specialized task over and over again. Because the product came to the workers, there was little movement, and this was called specialization of labor. Along with that, there is a man who kind of gets the credit for making the assembly line famous, and that would be Henry Ford. And in 1909, Ford basically said he was going to democratize the automobile. And when I'm through, everyone will be able to afford one, and everyone will have one. And Ford was right. By 1915, the automobiles, for the most part, were rapidly replacing horse and buggies. Ford became one of the richest men in the world, and the cost of an automobile plummeted from around $2,000 to less than $500. His assembly line increased efficiency. It also minimized originality. Automobiles before this period of time bore the mark of expert craftsmen. Every car was very unique, but the Model T, for the most part, were exactly alike, making it easier to fix and repair, but it also took away the versatility. All cars, for the most part, were black, and they kind of had the same features. The use of the assembly line, for the most part, dramatically impacted the workers. Workers at Ford's plants earned $5 a day. That was a lot more money than other people in semi-skilled jobs. But the deal is they performed the same task repeatedly. And it became very monotonous hour after hour because every movement was controlled. Along with that, the factories also controlled your lives. Ford hired men to visit workers to stop perhaps maybe heavy drinking among his employees or other undesirable activities that could impact the productivity. Other factory owners provided workers housing near the factory in lieu of paying wages so they could keep an eye on the workers and also lower their cost. And they also used script, which are basically coupons instead of paying money that could be used at a company store. So since the factory owners control prices, they pretty much controlled all the goods in the store, and they could benefit doubly from that. So life was kind of rough for our Ford company and for their workers. And we are going to perform an assembly line activity, but for those of you who are gone, we're going to kind of skip this. When we talk about our automakers, they also spurred success in other industries such as rubber, plated glass, which is like your windshield glass, nickel, lead. You should also throw in petroleum is part of that. But they also, by establishing all these different goods that you're going to need for an automobile, we also need new jobs that go along with automobiles. We need repairmen, we need gas stations, we need individuals who can monitor the laws, sell insurance. All these kind of things are going to come from the automobile industry. The auto workers also were expected to meet certain requirements set by Ford's sociological department, which we talked about just a little bit ago. Workers who transgressed, for the most part, could be suspended or fired. Cars created a new kind of consumer and worker, and that would be the auto consumer. We also had rising disposable income, and this led to many new consumer products, including facial tissue, frozen foods, vacuums, washing machines, refrigerators, toasters, you name it. All these are things that people are going to want to buy. And number 9, American Glenn Curtiss invented the Aeroplane, which is used to steer airplanes. So airplanes now are going to be maybe a little safer and maybe used more for commercial flight. And in 1927, Charles Lindbergh flew the first nonstop transatlantic flight. He demonstrated the possibilities of commercial aviation. He was certainly a pioneer. And number 11, in 1926, the National Broadcasting Corporation or Company, or known as NBC, established a network of radio stations to distribute daily programs. Radio was becoming a staple in a lot of homes. A lot of radio stations were established in the 1920s. And certainly this is going to change the way Americans are going to live. And on top of that, in 1928, Americans experienced their first presidential campaign when Herbert Hoover ran for the presidency. It was the first time that audiences back home could hear our candidates speaking for the first time, and they could hear that over the airwaves of their radios. And one other notable aspect of the economic boom of the 1920s was a changing attitude towards debt. People were starting to buy more products on credit, and that's going to become a problem as we kind of near the end of the 1920s and the beginning of the Great Depression. In number 14, to create consumers for new products, manufacturers turn to advertising, and we start developing a desire to have more people selling products. In number 15, the managerial revolution in companies created a new career of professional managers. Number 16, although our farmers produced very high yields without a corresponding increase in their demand, they received lower prices. Anytime that we have basically a high quantity of product on hand, it has a tendency to push down price. And our farmers were, in a way, experiencing kind of what's going to happen with the Great Depression a little bit ahead of time. Also, the Fordney-McCumber Act of 1922 dampened American markets for foreign goods, and it also provoked a reaction in the foreign markets against American agricultural products. In a sense, this was a raising of tariffs, and it decimated the farm economy. Thank you very much.